Were you ever chewed out by Nick Saban?
What?
What was it like? What was it like?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Hey, welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com, and we have another very special guest today, a wide receiver at Alabama from the recruiting class of 2018, a national champion, an SEC champion, number 18 from the Bring the Juice podcast. New episodes every Thursday from West Monroe, Louisiana, the great Slade Bolden. Slade, we appreciate you doing this, man.
Ben, I love the intro. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all and all y'all have done for me, all support and, writing on me and, taking pictures and whatever that looked like in the past. I'm just as thankful to be on here as y'all are for me to be on here. So,
Man, we're big fans of yours. Yeah, we've been watching you a long time. Slade, we got a lot to talk about here, including the time that you spent in Tuscaloosa, many memorable years there. And I know you've got stories, but I want to start with the Super Bowl, okay? Because it happened in your home state, right? Like you were actually down there doing some cool stuff, like I said, with the Bring the Juice podcast. But, a lot of your former teammates got to hoist the Lombardi Trophy this week. I'm sure you're pretty proud of those guys. What was it like watching that?
Man, it was so special. I mean, like you said, I'll start from the beginning. Speaking of Mac Hereford, who was on here not too long ago, I want to say it was around November-ish. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's this guy named Frank Delana, Max's brother, Frank Delana, who runs this podcast called Bring the Juice. He's going to fly us out, take care of us for our stay. Would you like to join?" And I'm like, "Heck yeah, let's do it. I've never been to Fresno, California. It's basically a free trip, and I get to sit on a pretty cool podcast and talk ball and, get to experience something new. Sign me up." So got there. We had a great weekend. We ripped the pod, and it was me and Frank really got close. We've gotten even more closer, and he's very similar to me. Former he actually walked on though at Fresno State, gained a scholarship, but he's a wide receiver. I like to say a white receiver. Not many of us, so we obviously had some similarities and connected very well. And then coming into the Super Bowl week, and he had talked about it to me before, but he just called me and was like, "Hey, like, would you like to be there all week?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm locked in. Let's go. Like, I'm all in. Like, this is something that not many people get to experience, and I'm still trying to, keep my social media platform, like I was telling you and Matt earlier, just trying to hold on to whatever I got left. And, if it is something that's going to help me in the future or also help somebody else, I'm willing to do it and just kind of hold on to the platform I got." So I was like, "Yeah, I'll be down there." And of course, like, it's New Orleans. I'm from Louisiana. I've been to New Orleans plenty of times, and I just knew it was going to be a great experience, and it definitely lived up. Actually, was more than what I expected. I did not know it was going to be as hectic as it was, and it was hectic, especially the first night when you mentioned, players. We went to the Caesar Superdome. Basically, you can name any news outlet, any kind of podcast, any kind of sports writing. They were all there. And obviously some of my guys like Jay Hurts and Smitty were on the podium, but a lot of other guys were kind of just walking around outside of the middle area. And as a former player, I was like, man, I could not imagine being those guys in full sweats. You got all the lightings on you. You got people coming up trying to, interview you and ask you all these questions. I mean, it was like the Hunger Games out there. And I'm sitting here and I'm basically working. Like, I'm trying to, get content, trying to interview guys. And it was honestly something for me personally that I had to kind of swallow my pride a little bit, because not only just the way you approach those guys, I've been there before. I've been interviewed by a lot of people at one time. So I was trying to be due diligent when in that process, but also, like, I still think of myself as someone who should still be there in their position. So that was a little part where I had to kind of swallow my pride and just be like, look, like, at the end of the day, these guys understand where I'm coming from. I obviously interviewed a lot of the guys that I played with, like Landon Dickerson, Byron Young, and a couple of my buddies were Nick Muse, and I played against Jordan Davis. That was some of the guys that I interviewed. I got to interview Jay Glazer, which was really cool. Got to see my boy Jameis Winston. He is such a character. I mean, he is everything you see on TV in person. Trust me, he is real as they come. So it was really cool experience. And the way I think I approached these guys was you know very good. I don't think it was anything that was I don't even know how you say it, but I think for me the way I approached them helped me kind of correlate that process better than some guys who are just like, hey, here, let me ask you a question. I feel like I was able to, like, I remember Jordan was, I mean, he was getting surrounded, and I was just like, roll tide, and he looked at me funny, and I was like, what's up, baby? And he was like, yeah, I was like, man, I don't know if you remember me, man. We played each other, and so we chopped it up, and I just joked with him. I was like, man, you got me. My last game, you got me when it counted the most. But I was like, hey, at the end of the day, I'm still 3-1 against you guys. So I had to let him know. I had to let him know. But he was cool, and all the other guys were really cool. And I know, like, Elias Ricks, Tyler Steen. I didn't even realize Cam Latu was on the team, but I passed Steen, I passed Elias, but those guys I didn't play with, and just kind of was going about my way. I didn't even really think about interviewing those guys, but man, it was a lot of walking, and the whole week was a lot of walking. But it was really cool. Got to meet Ocho Cinco, got to meet Greg Olson. I saw Big Whit because Andrew Whitworth went to my high school, played for Coach Saban in the early 2000s. Actually met him at Lake Tahoe when I was with the Ravens a few Fourth of Julys ago. And man, he's a cool guy, and it's so funny because I went up to him, and I saw that he was in Lake Tahoe. I DM'd him real quick. Hey man, like I'm in Tahoe as well. Would love to see you. Love to catch up. He was, yeah, for sure. And I saw him at the hotel we were staying, or the resort we were staying at, called Edgewood. I saw him at the restaurant there, and just got to talking. I was like, and the first thing I said was like, man, I know, like, you're LSU guy and I'm a Bama guy, but we still went to the same high school and both from the same area. He was like, nah, man, I'm a Saban guy. And I was like, yeah, I love that. I love that. So yeah, just to kind of finally answer your question with all the talking I just did, but man, it was so special to see those guys like Smitty, Jay Hurts, and all the guys I already mentioned. And obviously Smitty had a huge kind of dagger touchdown. I mean, it was something that I was really, really thankful for those guys, especially knowing the stories and how they got to where they're at, and just, being so close not too long ago to winning, and, finally, really winning big on that, Sunday. And it was a really cool moment because, at the end of the day, like, yeah, I hadn't been in the league for 10 years like I planned on it, or, was eventually being in the league for 10 years, or still not in the league, but that's the thing that I get to say. I played with these guys. I was teammates with these guys, and, developed a friendship with these guys that, not many people get to say. So I'm very thankful for that. And at the end of the day, I'm just happy for them because I know, all the work they put in from when they were freshmen in college, because we went through the same thing. And I think it was a really special moment. So I'm very happy for those guys, and proud of them for sure.
Incredible. I can't imagine what that experience was like. That was incredible. Slade, it sounds like you got a new appreciation for what we were doing on the other
Yeah.
side of it, right? Like, we're following you around at media days and crowding you and bombarding all you guys with questions and everything. That probably bothered y'all. And it seems like you've gotten the opposite perspective of that. So that's
100%.
really cool. And I thought you did an awesome job. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And people should go check it out on your Instagram page. That's S18DE. People should go check out. But I want to ask you about Jalen Hurts specifically. I mean, we've talked about this guy for years, and for somebody that was his teammate, like you were there in 2018 when he came back when many thought that he might transfer right after that 2017 national championship. I mean, he stayed the full season. He puts in the work. He waits his turn. He gets his moment in the SEC championship. Y'all obviously come up short in the national championship, and then he's on his way to Oklahoma. But what was that season like with Tua and Jalen in working with both after Coach Saban had made that change in the title game the year before?
Man, it was, and that to me, it's just a testament of the type of person Jalen Hurts is. I mean, he's always been a real solid dude with me. I didn't really obviously didn't touch the field much my freshman year, I redshirted. So, but I mean, you got to think. I mean, I'm in the locker room, on practice field, off season training with those guys every day, and I think for someone like him in his situation to go through what he did, to be benched and to eventually come back and help us win the SEC championship game, that 2018 season, by, when Tua got hurt and he came in and filled in and won the game for us or helped us win the game. I think it just shows what type of person, the resilience Jalen Hurts has, and just the type of person he is. And, at the end of the day, he's a team guy. He's going to put the team first. And I think that showed a lot, especially that year, because like you said, he easily could have went ahead and transferred. But, the competitive nature is like, hey, like, even though this guy came in for me in the national championship game and won the game for us, and, Tua is such a talented, at the time, freshman, and then, soon to be sophomore. He's got all the talent in the world. I think the competitive nature for Jalen was like, hey, it's still my job. Like, I still, or if it's not my job, I'm going to take my job back. I think that shows that his competitiveness. And at the end of the day, he's a Bama guy. Like, he made his name at Bama. I'm sure he loves the university. I'm sure he loves that town. And same thing with me, kind of, not trying to talk about myself, but were there times where I thought I should have transferred or could have transferred? Of course, but I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, I'm going to do whatever it takes to not only get on this field and produce, but be a starter and help this team win and help this team be successful. And I came here for a reason. I didn't come here to, develop a couple years and then transfer, which, that we can go in all that with the transfer portal now. But my thing was, at the end of the day, like, once you start something, you need to finish it. And I think Jalen that year was basically, I'm going to finish this. Like, I'm going to finish what I started. And then obviously it was, hey, like, this is a chapter in my life that's closed. Let me just move on. And I think, and even Coach Saban was totally on board. And I think even helped him with the whole process of, going to Oklahoma, and which I think eventually helped him develop even more as a passer, as a leader, as a player, and as a man. So, we have a lot of similarities in that way, but I mean, for him to go through what he went through, being on top of the world to the bottom of the mountain, and then being able to, be a second round pick, have to kind of wait his turn again behind Carson Wentz, and then eventually take over and be the franchise quarterback, and then producing so much, and then having a unbelievable postseason year. I think it was 2021. I can't remember what year that was, where he lit it up in the Super Bowl, but obviously came short. And then, I mean, became one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. And now he finally showed what he always knew he could do. I think he said one of his best quotes that I really like is, people had an opinion before I had a purpose, or people had a whatever he said. I really like it. Maybe you can help me out, Ben. It was something like that. People had an opinion before I had a purpose, and that says a lot about him. And I think that is something that's going to help other people that might be going through similar situations, and obviously kids that want to be in his similar shoes. So it was an amazing deal to see, for sure.
Yeah,
and to be a part of.
The quote you're talking about, I had a purpose before anyone had an opinion, right?
That's it. I had it backwards. Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, for sure.
And I think that makes more sense than what I said.
No. I mean, everybody knows exactly what you were talking about, and that's a tough one to remember, frankly. But a guy you mentioned earlier, a teammate of Jalen's, somebody that you shared the position room with, Devonta Smith. I mean, this guy has done it all. I mean, he's won at every level. He's won every individual accolade that you can. I mean, the guy is a winner, and he had one of the most dominant seasons ever in 2020. You were on the field for all of it. How good was Devonta Smith at Alabama?
I mean, he was unreal. I mean, he's one of the smoothest guys I've met. And like our receiver coach at the time, Coach Holman Wiggins, who one of my favorite coaches of all time, really helped me exceed and really helped me to become the player I was. I think he always said you want to flow like water when running routes and catching the ball, and that is exactly what Devonta Smith did. And we always called him gadget arms, or go gadget, because it seemed like the ball was around him, he was going to go get it. And that's the thing, is like learning from those guys and being in a room with those guys. I may not have been able to do the things that they could do in the way that they did it, but I would take different pieces. Like, I love the way Smitty released, and I still try to kind of use some of the ways he would release in my own way, maybe not as good as he could, or maybe not even as good, just different. So I was thankful to be in that room with all those guys, but just seeing him and how he I mean, he was a dog as soon as he stepped on campus, and I think he's always had an underdog mentality, being undersized, being a little thin, but man, he could run. He was so smooth, he was crispy, and he could run great routes and go get the ball whenever it was around him. So I never thought he was going to be short of anything. I always thought he was going to be exactly what we're seeing now because I saw the fruits of his labor during the time he was at Alabama, and then obviously he won a Heisman Trophy. He's one of the most decorated college receivers of all time. I think that just shows you how not only good that room was, but how good the players are in the NFL. Like a guy like that, it still took Smitty a couple years to really burst out on the scene, which I never hesitated. I always thought he was going to be that guy regardless. But from a whole nation of fans, not everybody saw it until maybe his last couple years. And I mean, he's well on his way to have a Hall of Fame career, and he's going to get a gold jacket one day. And for him and Jalen, all those guys on the team, I hope they are able to win another Super Bowl or however many. I'm sure they want more than just one.
It was fun to watch, to say the least. I mean, when they connected Jalen to Smitty on that 50-yard bomb to essentially ice it, that was just for Alabama fans, for college football fans, that was really special. Slade, you have an amazing story, man. Like you've talked a lot about the adversity that you faced as a child. I mean, you've talked about how there was addiction in your family. Your
Yeah.
grandparents helped raise you. I mean, this obviously impacted you as a person, but I'm sure as an athlete too. I mean, you said that you didn't necessarily have a chip on your shoulder when it came to proving people wrong, but you wanted to prove yourself right. Right. And, you
Yeah.
were in this recruiting class of 2018 that I mentioned. I mean, there are guys like Jalen Waddle and Pat Surtain and Josh Jobe, Jalen Armour Davis, some really high caliber athletes. I mean, you're among them too. I mean, but you got on the
Yeah.
field pretty early in your career. I mean, as a redshirt freshman, you're catching passes, you're throwing touchdowns, right? Like
Right.
Saban and the staff, they obviously liked you and like what you could do with such an incredible roster of talent. How did you manage to get on the field so soon?
Well, it's funny because you mentioned like I never worried about proving people wrong, and I always worried about proving myself right, which is true. But I still listen. Obviously, you can't not listen to what you hear, and obviously from the beginning, and people thought I should have never went to Alabama. I was never going to play. I should have went somewhere else. But even before high school, I had coaches and people telling me that to not even go to West Monroe, which was a Power 5A, the highest five or highest division in Louisiana public football. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? And I ended up starting as a freshman at West Monroe when people were told me I may not even play as a junior. So they're like, okay, that's check. Let's move on. All right, now you say I'm not gonna play at Alabama. I'm not even gonna touch the field. I touched the field pretty early. Okay. So now it's like, all right, well, he'll play, maybe be a special teams guy, but he'll never start. And then I started, and it's like, okay, what's next? What is there next to say that I can't do? And that's the thing is like I never really cared what people said. I've gotten plenty of people on Twitter warriors all the time, just saying this and that about me, and yeah, I see it, but I think it's funny half the time because most of them, probably were never able to get to the level I was playing at. But it's still kind of, it gets to you a little bit because I was well on my way. I was hoping to get drafted, and obviously I was able to start and have some success. But you got to think, man, I was in a room with some well, 5 first-round picks. And as much as I love Smitty and he deserved everything that got to him, I saw a lot of balls go over my head, and I was like, all right, there's another 60-yard touchdown to Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, Judy, Smitty, Ruggs, Jameson, Mechie. It didn't matter who it was, and you know. But at the end of the day, those guys helped me develop into the player. I think if I'd have went somewhere else, I would have never became the receiver I became, and definitely not the man I became. So, and that's obviously a lot to do with Coach Saban and that whole staff when I was there too. But I was well on my way to achieving my next goal was making an NFL roster and then playing the NFL and eventually starting the NFL. But the Lord has a way of His path is something that we don't know. We like to think we have everything in control, and I've always felt like I did everything I could to put myself in a position to be ready for an opportunity that presented itself. But I get to Baltimore, and I'm well on my way. Harbaugh loves me. The GM loves me. I feel like I'm making plays left and right. I know the system like the back of my hand, and even the offense coordinator for my first game was like, "You better get ready to play because you're gonna be playing a lot of snaps this Thursday." And I actually missed the first game. I always tell people I got hurt and missed the whole preseason, which is true. But the first game I got into like concussion protocol, which was, you bump your head in the NFL, and they're so worried about all the CTE stuff that you're out. Like, you're going to be out for 6 days. So I missed the first game that way. But the first practice, I came back from that concussion protocol, and I'd already been dealing with my groin. I ran a choice route, went outside, tried to cut back upfield, and as soon as I'm playing on my right leg, I just felt it. It's like something tearing off the bone. And that's obviously what hurt me. That's what changed my career path. Being an undrafted guy, being an undersized guy, you kind of have to be perfect. And that's just it. That was even when I was at Bama. Like, I had to do everything I could to get on the field, whether that's playing special teams, whether that's not having any mental errors or missed assignments, and catching everything that comes to me and taking advantage of every opportunity. And I was doing that, and just didn't get any film. So I didn't get any film. I went on IR, which probably wasn't the best idea. I probably should have took the settlement, because I think Baltimore would have re-signed me eventually. But if you go on IR, they can't, and they don't want you to go on IR. That's the thing they don't tell you, because you basically keep a roster spot and they have to keep paying you. So long story short, fortunately, I get signed by Atlanta. I get signed, probably 5 months after I got cut around Thanksgiving, my rookie year. And I love Arthur Smith. He was a great coach. I think he really liked me, even though he was on my ass all the time, which is part of it. It is what it is, and that means most of the time, if they stop coaching you, that means they're not worried about you anymore. And I was killing it. Same thing, going into OTAs and then training camp, and I was just like, all right, like, I'm doing really well. If I don't make the team, I'm at least going to be a practice squad guy. Then we got to the preseason games, and man, I got 3 targets and 2 catches as a receiver, and the only other target was not catchable. So it's like, and could I have done something better or done more? I don't think so. Like, I was, the typical first in, last out guy, the whole cliche of the white with a white athlete. But that's all I knew. That's how I developed, and that's how I became the player I was, and that's the only way I knew how to be. And I get there, and I was playing minimum special teams reps, even though I was in the special team coordinator's office, twice a week, just like, hey, like, just whatever you need me to do. I just want to get on the field and show that I can play. And I was open a lot. I ran great routes during the games. Just, the offense we ran was 2 to 3 tight end. We're going to run the ball in Atlanta, and Arthur Smith's a great run specialist, offensive coordinator, or at the time he's head coach, but that's what he is really good at. And so, the ball wasn't coming out regardless, and there's only one ball. You can only find one person. And if you're not, the first read on this play, like, it's tough. I think for the the receivers thing on Netflix, Randy Moss introed the whole documentary, basically like, this is how it is to play receiver. First off, you got to be on a team. Then you got to be able to dress out. And then if you're lucky enough to dress out, you got to at least be, in the rotation to possibly get on the field. And then if you finally get on the field, you got to hope that it's a pass play. And if it's a pass play, you got to hope that the center gets it to the quarterback. And then if all that works, then luckily the ball is supposed to go to you on a certain play that's called for that position. So it's like a lot of different things that have to go into it, and then you have to get open. So it's like, and then once you get the ball thrown to you, you got to catch it. So it's a lot that goes into it. And unfortunately, I was on offense that didn't throw the ball much. So, but Look, at the end of the day, I'm blessed. I'm very fortunate. Like I said, the Lord has a plan for all of us, and you kind of have to figure out what you're going to do. And right now, it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, Slade, it's a really interesting perspective that you have. I mean, as a guy who obviously leans on his experience, his work ethic, his faith, it sounds like too. Um, and it seems like you've got a lot of competitive character, right? And I know that that was a quality that your Alabama head coach looked for in a player and a person. You know, when you were at Super Bowl media day, you'd mentioned that you talked to Jay Glazer, the well-known NFL insider reporter. You were asking him for a prediction, and at the same time, he asked you, "What was it like to play for Coach Saban? What'd you think of him?" And
Yeah.
you said he was tough, but that he made you the man that you were never going to be if you never came to Alabama, right? So I wonder, what was your relationship like with Coach Saban? Like, what do you feel like was your I guess favorite memory? What you learned the most from him?
I mean, I think it's more, in the business kind of side of things, it helped. You never, a guy like me, some of the 5-star guys that were going to come in and probably get more opportunities than others because, hey, they were probably better athletes and recruited very highly for a reason. But a guy like me, it just, the way he ran things and the way we went about just our schedule and our practice and the way we prepared, and that just translated so much into the league. And I think, like, being disciplined and having, you don't have a choice but to work hard. Like, if you're not going to work hard, you're not going to make the first day. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. Like, I was already the guy that was going to try to work the hardest, learn as much as I could, be a sponge, and always be prepared the best I could. But I think the way we structure things, the way we went about our preparation and off season, I think that is really what instilled just, you know, even more discipline, even a higher work ethic, and just knowing, like, hey, like, if I don't do this correctly, if I don't do this the right way, I'm not going to achieve what the possibility of what I could achieve. So I think that was the biggest thing for me. And, my relationship with coach was, your typical, well, I would say typical, it was different, and I went to a high school where, I was really close with our coach, but then again, like, our coaches in high school were hard asses, like, it was no joke. So I was kind of used to that aspect, but not having like a real personal relationship with my coach was a little different. But that's the same for me and all the other guys that play for Coach Saban. But he does that in a way. That's just how he coaches it, and he helps you become a man by going through what we did and becoming a better player by going through what we did. Like, hey, like, we're not babysitting you anymore. You got to learn this on your own. Like, we're here to develop you. We're going to put you through things. We're going to give you all the help you need. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. It's up to you. How great do you want to be? What do you want? What's your work ethic? What are you going to put into this and reap what you sow? And I think that was a blessing in disguise. Obviously there were days where I was like, golly, like, I do not want to do this, or, man, I can't believe we're doing that. We just did this. There's a lot of days where it was tough. It was really tough, but you fight through that adversity. You realize, like, hey, like, if I can't do the little things right, they're not going to lead to the big things that I want to happen. So I think all those little things, and I mean, the way we were prepared, for games, and we prepared for the weeks, was that, I think that is what separated us as a team and as a player, because I was, watching film all the time, learning how to be more technically sound and more, I guess, telepathically better, if that makes sense. Just being able to, prepare the way we did obviously made the games a lot easier. And plus, I mean, I was going against the best competition every day. I mean, that's why I went to Bama, because if I was going to be the best player I could be, I wanted to compete with the best, play with the best, and be coached by the best. And that was the best place to be there at.
Well, Slade, you also, you mentioned playing with the best, right? And like you were competing with so many incredible wide receivers, but you had to develop chemistry with a lot of great quarterbacks. You played with, we mentioned Jalen earlier, but after he transferred, you play with Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, and Bryce Young, arguably the three greatest to ever do it at the position at
Yeah.
Alabama. I mean, what was that like? I mean, those quarterback rooms, but developing those relationships, getting on the same page with these guys to develop chemistry that would help y'all win games and national championships.
Yeah, and it's funny. I get asked the question all the time, like, who's the best quarterback you ever played with? I'm just like, man, like you're gonna say I
Tough
can't,
call.
I can't. Yeah, like I maybe like if it's just me and you and we're off the mic, yeah, maybe I can kind of tell you a little bias because like at the end of the day, like Max still my best friend to this day, so that was easy. We were so alike, I mean, we're very similar as people, so that was easier for us. And then when we became so close, I mean, he was my host, my going into my freshman year, or when I was still in high school, like he was my official visit host. So from the beginning, we were close. But I think, when Tua was there mainly and Jalen, I wasn't playing much. So it wasn't really, now we obviously practice and then, all out of practice, we would connect and, run routes and have a connection. But man, when COVID hit and Max started, we had already been on scout team together. We had already been, building that chemistry on scout team leading up to 2020. And, 2019, I was on the second team. Mac was on the second team. So we had built a chemistry for 3 years now, or 2 years going into 2020. And I was like the guy that anytime Mac needed to throw to somebody, I was there. And it didn't matter what time of the day it was or what day it was. Like, but then again, it was easier for me because we were already so close as friends and we were roommates at college at one point. Like all that kind of came to fruition, and it was really special being able to be on the field with like my best friend at the time. And then of course Mac leaves, and you know, honestly, like me and Bryce had a pretty good chemistry building up because even though I wasn't always on the first team, I would still get reps with the second team when Mac and Bryce were there. But that was one thing looking back, like it was so hard to kind of move on from like what I had with Mac to like, hey, like I'm gonna build this with Bryce. Even though I love Bryce and he was one of the best players I ever played with, and just like you talk about like mentally just so smart and just knowing the defense. Like we watched film together and I'm just like, man, like how did you even see that? Like I thought I was good at picking up things. And it was just so hard to kind of transfer that build up because that's 3 years of building chemistry with one guy. Like it's tough to turn around and be like, all right, I have 3, 4, 5 months to build what I had with Mac for 3 years with Bryce. But that doesn't mean we didn't have great chemistry. I think Bryce was so good that it didn't matter how good your chemistry was. I think that's one thing that made Mac so good is he knew exactly where you were going to be, not just me, but wherever everybody else was going to be. And I've always thought Mac threw the best and most accurate ball, like catchable. And I thought Bryce was just the most talented, like could make any throw, could get out of any situation and still look downfield. I always said Tua threw the prettiest ball but that's like, who has the prettiest swing in baseball of all time? Ken Griffey, right? Ken Griffey was a lefty. Lefties always have a pretty ball. So that's how I looked at it. But I always thought Tua was just had the most talented arm, just being able just to kind of let it fly and make any throw, and just it was always going to look good. So like it's hard for me to choose one. Obviously, I'm biased just because of me and Mac's friendship, but that has nothing to do with what was on the field and the product that was on the field. I mean, it's really hard for me to choose, and I would never choose one just because they're all great in their different ways, and that's what they're continuing to do to this day.
Slade, stick with Mac for just a second, right? I wanted to follow up about him. I mean, people already forget that he had one of the greatest seasons any quarterback has ever put together in college football history. It's
Mhm.
undeniable, right? And you were one of his favorite targets, as you just basically explained. I mean, you catch a
I
touchdown
don't know if I
pass.
was his favorite, man. I mean,
One of them.
he
One of
threw a
them,
lot
right?
of balls to Smitty and
No,
Waddle,
no,
man.
no.
I'm just
I said one of them.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But look, I mean, you catch a touchdown pass in the national championship game against Ohio State. I mean, Alabama fans love the guy, Mac. But why was he so special? Like, what do people maybe not appreciate about like how great Mac Jones was and is?
Man, kind of piggyback off, we talked about Jalen, like Mac's competitive level is just, that's why I was like, man, he's going to go in there in New England and do even more than Tom did, just because he mimicked his game after Tom. And, we always would joke, like, he was Tom and I was Edelman, you know what I mean? And of course, it made sense. But I think his competitiveness and his will to, and that's another credit to Coach Saban. Like, Mac prepared so well too that regardless of maybe his arm ability or his athletic ability, he was going to make up for it by knowing exactly what the defense was doing at all times. And I think that was just a testament of him and his competitive nature and his and obviously he got a master's. He's a 4.0 student. He's smart as hell. Like he was very good mentally, and that just, and dude, he was also super talented too. Like we always joke about like, the guy that was, not the most athletic, not the best arm, or for me, not the fastest. It's like, man, I wouldn't even gotten the offer to begin with if I wasn't talented. Like that's the start. It's just you may not be as talented as the guys that are on that same team as you. So, man, Mac was such a competitor, and I think that's something that he was so good at. And he was just such a locker room guy, a great leader, and everybody, trusted in him and believed in him. And obviously his story of being a backup, being, on scout team and being like a former 3-star, 4-star, whatever he was, like wasn't the highest recruited guy, I think. And he's kind of cut from a similar cloth than me, like just being able to relate to anybody in the room. And I think everybody from every background was able to kind of, grab onto him, be like, hey, this is our guy. And I think that at the end of the day, that is what the best quarterbacks are able to do. And that's what the best leaders are able to do.
Slade, you've been so generous with your time here. Whenever we get the opportunity to talk to a former Alabama player who played at the level that you did and your former teammates did, we want to go through like a little bit of a lightning round, a get to know you kind of a thing. Get to
Okay.
know the guy behind the guy, right? Like when you played
Right.
at Alabama. So let's get started with this. What SEC team do you hate the most?
Oh, Lord. It's between Auburn and Georgia, but I'm going to go Auburn.
I'm just going to say, one of my colleagues, Patrick Greenfield, he caught you on the sideline, I think, at the Georgia game, and that's when you said Georgia's still our little brother, right? Like, I believe you said that. I believe you shared that. So I thought Georgia might.
I still
come
believe
up.
it too. I still believe it. It still stands to this day.
You just got done talking about him. Maybe this is your answer, but your favorite Alabama teammate?
It's probably Mac.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's my guy.
All right, toughest teammate to go against at practice?
What people would expect would be Patrick Surtain, but it's Brian Branch. Because I went against him every day my last year at Bama, and man, was he really, because like Pat was more on the outside, so Brian was covering me. Now, did I go against Pat? Of course, and he was unbelievable, but like the reps on reps on reps on reps, Brian Branch, I had to be perfect every day to try to get open on him, and he's obviously showing exactly what type of player I knew he was going to be, and he is right now with Detroit.
Unbelievable. Guy's going to be a potential future defensive player of the year candidate, I'm
No
guessing.
doubt.
Hey, were you ever chewed out by Nick Saban?
What?
What was it like? What was it like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always say what I always told people, and a bunch of other guys. I think Terry on said at one time is like, you're going to get chewed out eventually. Now, coach chews out guys more to the guys that he knows that can handle it. But I got chewed out a lot, and it was always, okay, like, yeah, I'm getting yelled at. Maybe there's a few cuss words in there that aren't very nice, but you always got to take away the way he's presenting the message to what he's actually saying in the message. Like, that's just how he coaches. It makes you learn fast. I mean, I was a safety when I first got to Bama when I early enrolled, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had never played defense other than just like, hey, go cover this guy, and because they got another good receiver and we got one good corner and whatever. Never played safety like that in my life, so I had no idea what I was doing. So there were times where I was messing up big time, and I got hat thrown across the field, and Saban marching, getting in my face, and I'm just like taking it, like, Coach, am I supposed to know that? Am I supposed to know what I'm supposed to know this? Like, but you have to take away the way he's presenting the message and just listen to what he's saying, because that's just how he coached, and that's how he was able to get guys to learn quicker and play faster. And trust me, I learned very quick because I was like, I'm tired of this guy chewing me out because it's not fun. It's not fun at all. But that's just how he is. I mean, I'm not the only one that, trust me, not the only one. I probably got the least chewed out version of Saban than some of our former alumni that played for him when he was a little bit younger and more fiery.
Well, I was at the Rose Bowl last year, and I asked like 20 different Alabama players during the media day, like, have you ever been chewed out by Nick Saban? 100% of the answers were yes. So everybody's got their chewed out story, right? What was your favorite place to eat in Tuscaloosa when you were in school?
I have to be Chuck's Fish. Love Chuck's. I mean, if it wasn't Chuck's, I got a sleeper, was Mr. G's in Northport.
Okay,
Mr. G's was very good. Metro Diner. I love Ramajamas, of course, but Ramajam is more of a hospitality thing for me because I know Michael Hebron very well, and he always took care of us and me. And one of our buddies had like an NIL deal. So we would go out there, basically eat breakfast for free, like twice a week. So it was fun. But yeah, I mean, there's so many. There's some that I hadn't even been to, and it's crazy. And I'll go back, especially this past year. I went back a lot, and I'm like, I ain't never seen this place in my life. But I would say on a food level, like Chuck's Fish was always. I'm a big sushi guy too, so that obviously kind of comes together.
Good answer. Popular answer. Slade, if you didn't go to Alabama, where would you have gone?
Oh, I'd like to say nowhere, but I grew up a Tiger fan, being from Louisiana. But honestly, it was down to Bama and TCU, so it would probably have been TCU would have been my second choice.
Gotcha. Thanks for being honest. Just a couple more here. When does Alabama win another championship?
2025.
Ooh, people are going to like that answer, Slade. Toughest loss.
I think it's going to be true.
Okay, all right, we'll hold you to it. Toughest loss. Toughest loss or loss that hurt the most.
It would have to be 2021 national championship game in Indianapolis, just because that was the game I played the most, started the most, or I played the most that game. And, my last year, I think that was the hardest for us and as me because, Mechie was already down, and then J-Mo comes in and gets hurt before the half. And, I try not to put too much pressure on myself, but I did. I put a lot of pressure on myself to, kind of be that last leader in the receiver room to, try to, help this team win. And, looking back, man, I feel like I could have done more, even though I did have a good game. But, there's still those food left out on the table for me. And that one hurt the most, no doubt. That was a tough loss.
We're not going to end it on a sour note like that, Slade. Okay. Don't worry about it.
Good.
But what last one here? Your favorite Alabama football memory, if you had to pick one.
I mean, for me, it was really just the guys, the locker room, just all the different experiences I had just being with my teammates. But on the field, it would have to be scoring a national championship in 2020. I mean, that was just such a special moment. And I think, I've been asked this question before, and it wasn't just scoring. Like, that was cool. Don't get me wrong. Like, my first receiving touchdown happened to be in the 2020 national championship game to basically seal the deal. Like, and I got it thrown from my best friend, Mac. Like, But for me, I think the special thing about that was seeing how everyone else reacted to that score. Like just all my teammates. And I remember Mike Hereford telling me like he was in a box with a bunch of former players, and he was like they were just as excited for me to score than I was. And I think that's what means the most. And I thought that showed like the type of person I am, the player I am, to have everyone else just as happy and proud for me to score. And also my family was there. Like I think everything outside of me actually scoring the touchdown, that's what was special to me. That was the most memorable moment.
Incredible moment and incredible interview here, Slade. I mean, our thanks to you, Slade Bolden, former Alabama wide receiver. You can see him everywhere on social media now at S18DE. Check out the Bring the
Love
Juice
it.
podcast. New episodes every Thursday. Slade, so cool of you to make some time, man. We really appreciate it. We're big fans of yours.
Oh, Ben, I really appreciate you and Matt. I mean, you guys have supported me from day one and always been, a great writers and great people. So trust me, I'm just as thankful to be on here. And obviously, anytime you guys want to run it back, don't hesitate.
We'll hold you to that, too.
For sure.